Welcome to Mastering Life's Adventures, an educational podcast about tapping into your true self, the soul, the substance of your life, to discover what life's ups and downs are really about, and how to have a greater sense of purpose, peace, joy, and fulfillment. I am Dr. Judith Holder, your host, coach, psychologist, fellow seeker who enjoys diving into the connections between spirituality, psychology, wellness, and your everyday life's adventures. All preparing and polishing you like the facets of a magnificent diamond to be your best self. If you're craving more from your life, you are in the right place. Come, let's journey together and transforming what you know into who you really are. Mastering Life's Adventures begins now.
Hi, I'm back, and I'm here to talk about, I know, we've been talking about this for the past couple of episodes in terms of barriers and roadblocks, but I think we need to still talk about this, about the weary warrior. Yes, the weary warrior. And the reason why I think we need to talk about this a little bit more is because I think not only does it have such a impact upon our daily life in terms of things that we worry about, in terms of the ventures that we have in our life, and that may spill over to our worrying about how they ended or didn't end or how they went in a different direction than we wanted them to go. But also, it does have an impact on our soul, more so than we realize, deeper than we realize. And so I've been thinking about that and thinking about how can I explain this in a way that it could be understandable. And all I can say is I'm going to give it a shot. But doesn't mean I'm not going to have other additional thoughts or in the future, other additions to what I say today about this barriers and roadblocks to weary worry. And as you know, I've talked about the worry and what it means and on the continuum of worry to anxiety. And that was in talking about the barriers in the first episode of Weary Worry. And also, I talked about in that first episode about weary and the acronym of weary, that the W was having a worry period, just as a reminder. The E was evoking a mantra of some sort. The A was allowing for to have quiet time. And the R was reviewing misbeliefs that you may have. And I was some point talk in the future about this whole aspect of misbeliefs and how they impact not only our soul evolution, but also our energetic level and the ways in which we perceive things. Then I also talked about the why of the weary was about you and working on you being your best self. And then left you with some thoughts about mindfulness as well. And I haven't forgot about doing an episode or part of an episode in the future on a mindfulness practice that you can engage in. So I do remember that. But the thing that I wanted to talk about before I get into talking some about the soul impact was a little bit more about the weary part of worry. I wanted to talk more about a comment that I made. And that related to if you could reduce the weary, and that's why I was giving the acronym, then you could reduce the worry. And I started thinking about that. Is that true? As I've mentioned before, you ask yourself these things, and is it true or not? And you know what? I think it is. I do believe when we reduce the weariness, and I'm going to talk more in this episode about being weary, that it allows us to be able to manage or to transmute the things that we worry about, to see it at a higher level if we are following that path of a soul advancement. And I'll talk about that in a minute as well. So when we're thinking about weary, there's a couple of things that come to mind. And I'm going to talk about that as it relates to this question that I had and been thinking about. And I put it out to you as seekers to think about. Have you ever thought about what happens to your soul when we become weary? When we become weary, what impact does it have on your soul? And we know can take that weary part, that weariness, can take on many types of, can be in many types of forms or shapeshift in some ways. Because when we think about weary, we think about being tired. Correct? Having to maybe deal with, in a meeting, boring facts and figures that are coming out your ears, and you're just tired of hearing about these facts and figures from this meeting that you've been into, and it's fatiguing. So there's some tiring that takes place when the weariness. And then you think about being worn out. And the soul can feel worn out too. And I'm going to kind of tie all these concepts in, hopefully together. But I'm feeling my way through here, so bear with me. When we're feeling worn out, it's like the bickering that goes on sometimes with kids, if you're a parent. And they're bickering all the time. And it's just wearing you through and through. And you just want them to be quiet and get along. Well, think about that when we're bickering inside ourselves and what happens to our soul. And then there is the weary part of frustration. And the frustration can come from, for example, a person making a rude statement to you or a comment about something that is very much inappropriate of what they said. And so you get frustrated by it. But if we get frustrated again and again and again about what people are saying or what they're doing to us or how they're acting towards us, does that have an impact on our soul? And if so, how does it? So the weariness can also move towards feeling discouraged. We get weary because we get discouraged. We tried something, we tried it again, and we tried it again. We tried to interact with that person that we didn't get along with in different ways, but they still kind of pushed us aside and didn't want anything to do with us. And we get frustrated and feel discouraged by it and feel discouraged that we're at least trying to attempt, but nothing's happening, nothing's moving forward. Can that happen to our soul? And how does this reverberate in the essence of our soul, our outer frustrations? It doesn't mean we don't have inner frustrations too. We do. It's just the example that I'm giving is an outer frustration. And again, it's like we don't think about it from the standpoint of our soul. Then there is the weary part of fatigue. It's like I was thinking about this whole aspect of ruminating about things, ruminating about if we did it right, or did we show up in that meeting in the right way that we wanted to show up in, or did what we say, was it taken in the right way? And we're ruminating. This is another form of worry. But the ruminating moves us into being fatigued and tired, and not knowing why we're feeling emotionally tired or we're feeling mentally tired. We just know we're tired about things. This accumulation of tiredness and worn out and frustration and feeling discouraged and fatigue can also then lead us to this aspect of exhaustion. Weariness is a form also of an exhaustion. And that exhaustion is, it just feels like we just, you ever hear the same saying, too poop to pop? I'm too pooped to pop, like soda pop. You're just tired. You're moving towards being exhausted, feeling just a low grade of not having energy or a high grade of not feeling energy. And these different aspects of feeling weary or feeling weariness, I believe, does have an impact on our soul. And I think it was in episode 9 that I talked about the states of the soul. And I mentioned 4 of those states of the soul. And I'm going to talk about, you can go back and listen to that. I'm going to talk about 2 states of the soul in this particular episode. I want to focus on one is the asleep soul that is unconscious, that is dormant, that is really utterly focused in terms of materialistically, just trying to get more in life, so to speak, and moving in a way that we're so focused and driven, to get that promotion, get that next item, such as a new car. So we're so focused on that we're externally focused. And so these are the qualities that make for a sleep soul that is unconscious. It's not meaning that the soul is not there. It's just dormant. It's just unconscious to us. We have a soul, and the soul does have different states that it can be in. So I'm going to talk about that as it relates to this weary aspect of worry. Then there is the engaged ascending soul, which I talked about in that episode number 9. And that is really the soul's quest to be attuned to the essential aspects, the Christic elements of who that soul or who we really are, that true self, the essential self, that self of us that is hungry for growth and wants to continue to evolve and to be also united with your I am presence, with your God source, with your higher self, whatever you want to call that. And in order to have greater guidance and direction, it wants to learn how to be more Christ-like and emulate Jesus or emulate Buddha or emulate a saint as a way and a path to reunite with the highest aspect of one source, which is your God source. These 2 elements or states of the soul is what I'm really quite fascinated by, because the asleep soul, when it's asleep, it doesn't know that there is something more. The person only sees what is tangible to it, materialistically focused. It's only thinks about developing the intellect to get what it wants, to get more skills in order to get what it wants, which is different from the ascending soul. It's getting those skills because it wants to honor God and do a greater goodness to God. Give a greater goodness unto God. But with the asleep soul, it focuses more on, and we have to be thinking about, where am I in this continuum here? What does this mean for me in this whole area what we're talking about and focused on today as it relates to weary worry? So with this asleep, usually asleep in a person is focused so much on the outer, which I have talked to you about as the ego persona, in my accomplishments. I was able to do this. I was able to graduate from this prestigious school. I was able to be able to win that race. All by myself. I did it. I was able to make the achievements in life and get the awards. I was able to do it. All by myself. It was my effort. It was my thinking about how to innovate that project at work in order for us to be successful. It was my effort that went out and found a partner and decided I wanted to get married. And I did get married. And even though it didn't result in being successful, but I was able to get it. I was able to make that contact. And when I say not successful, because it may result in a separation or a divorce. So what becomes emerging out of the asleep soul is the focus is around, I'm doing it myself. And therefore, you're doing all by yourself, you have greater worry. Worry about the day, events, worry about when things have happened, worry about how people are treating you or not treating you in the light or in the way that you would like to be treated, worrying about what you need to say in a meeting to make sure you stand out, and how you may need to cut a person off when they're saying something that is not to your liking, because you want to make sure you're seen in a positive light and seen from a vantage point of knowing many things and want to be the go-to person. So the focus then is you're worrying about things that will, quote unquote, get you ahead, get you moving in living life and having the joys of having a big house and the joys of having a car and having joys of having a family and the joys of having social gatherings, people around you. But they don't always result in joys. We may have these things and we still worry. And we're worrying so much that it is impacting our sleep and it is impacting our mood state in terms of maybe being grumpy or easily frustrated. Going back to those qualities of being weary, moving into the weary worry, or feeling more frustrated by how people are treating you, or feeling more worn out because you worked on that project for 48 hours and it didn't yield anything. Or you're feeling really tired and discouraged because of that, not resulting in anything, and feeling as if people are being more critical of you and not hearing or seeing all that you've done in order to move the firm forward if you're a lawyer, or all that you have done to get higher financial recognition if you're an investor, or getting things done in order to help the family to keep organized. And so all your efforts and all your worrying is only resulting in maybe different degrees of exhaustion. And being asleep in terms of your soul, it continues to be weighed down by the sense that it's all about you. It's all about what we can do in the world. And the soul continues to sleep because it's not awakened to realize there is a greater meaning and a greater truth that we may need to take some time and slow down and start asking ourselves some deeper questions around, what is this about? What is my life about? What is the purpose of my being on planet Earth? Because what you're trying to do in awakening from the sleep state to a more awakened or partial awake state even, which is one of those stages, is you're trying to move past the intellectual mind that can still create ignorance, which is the ignoring of the laws of the universe and the laws that exist that help us to navigate our spiritual path, because we're so self-centered. Yeah, we all have some self-centeredness in us, but for the asleep soul, the person is a lot more focused on selfishness as opposed to selflessness, which is the quality of the engaged and ascending soul. And many of us are in between, so we're not quite, totally asleep, but we may not be totally engaged and ascending in our quest. And that's what the path of soul evolution, learning to be your best self each day in every way. That's the beauty of this, that we're all on this path. We're all walking this path and can be able to do it together and to make it a happier and joyful experience and not be critical of ourselves. Just be aware and pivot, make a change. And one of the things about the sleep soul is usually they will tend to engage in repetitive behaviors and not know that they need to make some self-corrections. So the repetitiveness also results in weariness. I keep on doing this. I don't know why it's not working. I keep on doing it though, but it's not working. What's going on here? There's some of the things we get frustrated by. And because we're thinking with the intellectual mind, we can figure it out. And there's many things we can figure out, but the intellectual mind also needs to be under the auspices of something higher, something greater, the divinity that exists within us, in our soul awareness of that engaged, ascending soul. We can develop, and it can happen very easily with the asleep soul, of the habit of worry. And even those who are on a spiritual path sometimes have to guard, which I've talked about this in the past episodes, worry. Guard against developing the habit of worry. Worry because we're used to worrying. Worry because of fatigue. Or worry because we think that someone's going to take something from us or hurt us in some way. But let me change gears for a minute and talk about the ascending and engaging soul. Because when we can be more intentional and conscious about moving on a path of engaged ascending, which is that true self, that true centeredness in who we are, that true understanding that gold fabric that I've talked about in the past, the gold fabric that is within us, that gold fabric that is also the fabric of what God is made of. When we can know that we're ascending and we're engaged in the striving on the soul path that we're moving on, then worry actually takes a different form. Yes, we become now first and foremost aware that God is the director of our life, and that the energy that we have comes from God, that the energy that flows into us comes from an infinite source. And if it comes from an infinite source, do we need to be weary? Or do we need to be more disciplined in how we think? And I write, in my book, Mastering Life's Adventures on the Beam, about God being like a fountain. And in that fountain, you have all these sprigs coming out from that fountain and going in many different directions. And those sprigs of water that are coming out, one of those sprigs is you that's coming out. But at the foundation or the core of that fountain is God. So you're coming out from God in that sprig. I'm coming out from God in that sprig. Your people that are around you are coming out in their sprigs from God. But God is our source. God is our infinite source of energy. That is a whole different mindset to wrap your mind around, that it's not all about me. It's not all about, when the soul is asleep, about I've got to do it all myself. It really moves more into, by the grace of God and God's energy, I do this by. By the grace of God and God's energy, I'm able to live, move, and have my being. And by the grace of God, I have to be a just steward of his energy, of the Father, Mother's God energy, the I Am Presence energy, the higher source energy. I have to garner that energy. I need to protect that energy. And worry is a form that siphons off that energy. And that's why I had asked you in the episodes to start thinking about where your worry is. Where does it go to? Keep a journal or a log that allows you to have that, so you can start pinpointing where your energy is going and start to work on that to pull it back in and now allow your thoughts or your feelings or reactions to go down those paths, because you want to protect God's energy. Because as you protect God's energy, you protect yourself, and you have more energy inside yourself, and you have more therefore you have more creative abilities to think about what you need to do in a particular situation, because you're not doing it from the ego persona perspective. It's all about me, but you're doing it from, it's all about us. Us is being God plus you and the angels, helping you, guiding you, directing you to be able to be your best self and to know how you need to be in a particular situation. In some ways, we need to, for those who are really on that engaged ascending path for your soul, have to be able to ask God, thank God, give God the glory. God, what do I need to do in this situation? Thank you for your help in this situation. I give you glory for guiding me in this situation. Totally different perspective. Totally a different way of being. And I know we're going to have to talk about more of this as we're moving in these episodes, and talking about mastering life's adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. We live on a planet of forgetfulness. I'm included. I forget. Thank God I have people around me to help me to remember. You need people around you to help you remember that you and your core essence is from God. That gold fabric is from God. You have that fabric within you. And we have to hold on to that and know that by the grace of God can help us. So we don't have to worry. We can reduce the worry. We don't have to be weary. We don't have to follow down that path of weariness, of those qualities and characteristics I talked about in terms of being tired and worn out and frustrated and feeling discouraged and fatigued and exhausted. It's like, I don't need to do that. I need to be able to know that I'm on a spiritual path, walking that path. And I also need to be able to comfort, ask God to show that comfortness in me. Because of certain situations that happen to us, even those walking a spiritual path can get weary at times, but they don't stay there. They ask God's guidance and help. And so when you are feeling weary, how do you ask God to enter into your world? Or for an angel, an archangel, to enter your world, to support, to guide, to help you, to bring comfort to you? As I mentioned in previous episodes, that comfort can come in different ways, through a book, or through meeting a person, or a smile from a person, or from you creatively thinking about something and innovating in a particular way that gives you more energy and joy. And making sure we're putting our attention on things that are honorable, that are joyful, that are in attunement with our spiritual direction, our spiritual path that we're moving in. And we can ask God to renew His strength in us, to renew her strength. I think it's a Father, Mother God. So renew the strength, comfort us, to help us, to buoy us up, and to walk in a light of lightness and joy and peace. The more we put our attention, you hear me say this a lot, is what we get more of. So we want to put our attention to those things that helps us to move through some challenges or difficulties or strains that are going on in our life. And that knowing that we're not doing alone. We're doing it with God's help, our Iron Presence help. We're doing it with learning to be more Christ-like in our thoughts, feelings, behaviors, actions, reactions. Learning to do self-correction when we need to. We didn't do it right then, pivot. Move in a different direction. Ask for forgiveness. Correct what you need to correct. Move on. In this episode I've been talking about, and I'll have to continue to think about this whole worry, and what it means from the soul perspective. It's what we've been talking about how does worrying impact our soul? And I ask you to think about that too and reflect on that and maybe even journal on it for yourself as we continue to talk about these barriers and roadblocks to soul progress. Thank you for listening to my thoughts about where we worry and being able to look at it from more of the soul lens about what it means and how do we make corrections that are in attunement with our soul and our soul's progress. Something to think about. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining me for this episode on Mastering Life's Adventures, being your best self through soul evolution. If you have enjoyed what you've heard today, I would be delighted if you would share this episode with others, leave a thumbs up, and subscribe to my Mastering Life's Adventures podcast. Look forward to your joining the next episode. Please leave any comments or suggestions you might have below. Bye for now.